Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Frontier Opening Bell. It's a Friday, the 14th of August. I am Bosin Amofaye, and of course, the big story for the Nigeria space is the unemployment data for second quarter 2020, just released by the Bureau of Statistics. Of course, the last data released by the authorities was in the third quarter of 2018. This figure has a lag of about a year and a half in between. So let's put that in context for everyone to know. Also, in the executive summary or introduction to this report, the Statistics Office says this data was collated during the pandemic period and done virtually and by telephone, and that the number of households surveyed are also reduced a little bit in number, and you can read all that up. Putting that out there, that usually the MBS will send the field officers to go do the job on the field. Well, with the pandemic that broke out during the first quarter and into the second quarter with the lockdown, it was impossible for the MBS staffers to do this. So they resorted to use of telephone and other means to try to get this data sorted out. Let me welcome Chima Ukadike, who is from Betiva Capital, the consumer goods analyst. Chima, good morning.
Good morning, person.
Good, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Ayode Chebo is the CEO and chartered trader at Afinvest Securities. Thank you very much as well, Ayo. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's hit the ground running. Let me allow Chima to tee off the conversation for us when we look at a summary now coming through on your TV screen in terms of the headline figure, unemployment 27.1 and the rest of that. And the mystery index is what caught my attention, close to 40% right now. Chima.
So thank you, Martin. When we look at the total unemployment rate for Nigeria as at Q2, we can see that the unemployment levels rose from 23% to 27%. Personally, I think that is a mild rise, because if you look at the unemployment levels between the labor force, the capacity labor force for when we look at the value in Q3 18 and value in Q2 20, we can see that there was an 11% decline in labor force. And I think that in Q2 or during this time, because of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that there was disruption in school activities and exams, and as such, a lot of these graduates have been unable to join or enter into the labor force that we would have seen if we had normal activities. So I think that has been a contributory factor to why the labor force has not been as expanded as we would have seen, and why I think that the unemployment figures that we're seeing now is quite mild as opposed to what it could have been ex-COVID. Also, when we look at the unemployment levels, like I said, we'll see that the decline was also coming from the age bracket of those in the age bracket of 15 to 34, which would be from people who would normally be in schools. So that's what I think about the unemployment levels.
Yes, I agree with you, and perhaps we'll begin to see these numbers, like you start talking about the age bracket. Again, the COVID-19, perhaps this report does not really reflect truly the situation of unemployment and underemployment in Nigeria because of the lockdown. Schools were not open, teachers were not there, all those who are attached are not there, and of course, like you rightly put it, perhaps ex-COVID will give us a better number data if we have it on our hands. Ayodeji, what's your initial thought on these numbers as we begin to break it down from the headline?
Yes, thank you. I think I'll align with Chima in terms of the levels at 27, based on even estimate or expectation. We for most analysts projected that to be above maybe 30%, and the main reasons why these projections may also be somehow accurate is that when we look at the expansion in the economy, it's really been very minimal. You look at companies either are closing down more than expanding, opening, especially within this COVID period. There have been a lot of more job losses, or if we would say more underemployment. So more people are working less hours than they used to be. But I think the takeaway from here, if you based on this data, so about there is 27.1% unemployed, which is out of the total 80 million labor force. So it looks like labor force declined significantly compared to the 90.5 million in Q3 2018. But it means we need to, with our growing population, we need to be very deliberate to see how we want to industrialize the nation to be able to expand and get more people engaged. There's a very strong correlation between unemployment rate and also security. So with even the lower labor force, which we are seeing, when you juxtapose that with the growing population, it means less people are willing to work, less people are searching for work. Then the question that comes to mind is, what are these guys really engaged in if they are not willing to, if they are not making themselves available to work, and they are not searching for work? It means that they must be involved in other things apart from main work. So I think by and large, it just further just buttresses the main distressing situation of Nigeria, and it's good that at least we have a data that we can all reference regarding employment. And you spoke earlier about the mystery index. So by the time you also add up our inflation rates, you can see where we rank, and we check across the world. So it's really a call for action for the policy holders to see, or policy actors to see what we can do to ensure that this is minimized going forward.
Great, thank you. One story out of on the news wires this morning says we are now beginning to become the capital of gambling, as it were. It calls it the gambling craze in Nigeria. That's how this report puts it. So, then when you look at the speed at which Chima, at which you will see the EFCC, for example, arrest those that are classified as Yahoo boys. If you look at the numbers in the Southwest, whether they go arrest them in a nightclub or at a party, they come in dozens, as it were, sometimes up to 2 dozens or thereabout. So, and then we look at the level of kidnappings and what have you. So when we look at our labor force, Chima, do you think we are beginning to see a lot of more hands in the devil's workshop, as it were, so to speak?
Well, the numbers kind of align around that story, like you have said. We'll see that it would seem like many people are just trying to get by the way that they can through any means necessary. So that is what we see as we see that the amount of crime has gone up. Recall during the onset of the pandemic, how we're hearing stories of insecurity around as people didn't have jobs, and we're hearing that they were going around attacking households and all that.
Yeah, they call themselves 1
so
million boys.
I think that that is really exactly. I think that is really the story we've seen when we see that unemployment is rising. We see that there's a lot of insecurity and there's a lot of armed robbery or illegal activities, as it were. So I think the numbers quite align with that story.
Okay, when we break this down to age brackets, and we'll just push this up very quickly in terms of unemployment. Look at the age group of what ought to be the most active people in employment, age 35 to 40. These are folks who ought to have just finished a secondary, finished up with tertiary institutions. So look at this age group. The labor force there is about 20 million, and the total unemployed was about 4.09 million people. Ayodeji, when we begin to break down by age brackets, we'll talk about the education, because again, I took a look at that as well. What does this tell you about the Nigeria's working age group that ought to be mostly employed, very active?
So looking at the statistics, very interesting to see a very strong and very agile age group, about 60 million between the age of 15 and, if you look at, take it to 40, 44. And that always shows that there's that demand and there's that market even in Nigeria. So looking at how, so beyond the data, I'm trying to look at what do we benefit from this? So we see that market there. So we just need to align our policies to take advantage of this very young, very population. And we look at it in terms of education, you would still see very high rate, about 15.8 million have never attended school. It means this further buttresses that the very strong or huge SMEs that we have in Nigeria supporting. So for most of them are into trades. So once some of what we just need to do is understand our data and see how we can align the policy. So if we know that trade is really critical, it means it takes us to that subject of FX. If it's not available for them to, because they import a lot, if it's not available for them to import, then it means that it's really affecting a major part of our population, and that is also impact on employment. And for those that we can see very low, the population of the doctorate just 76,000 based on the survey. It means that we still also need to see how we want to also place more value, so that we have more people also going to research, developing a lot of new ideas that we can also market and sell to the world. So I think by and large, it's interesting that we have this data and we are all still trying to digest and make sense out of the data and see how and also I know government will also see how they can align policies around this data to ensure that beyond the concern of the unemployed, number of unemployed, what do they need to do to see that going forward this begins to moderate? Because this is like the flaw, bringing out this data within the COVID period. So, and we feel that things should improve going forward. So we hope that they will also be consistent with the release of this data on a quarterly basis, like we have for other data.
Very interesting point you mentioned there, Ayodeji. Chima, when we look at this data, interrogate it a bit further, I try to take a look at those who are uneducated, those who never had formal education, and those who had a primary school education. It looks like these are the folks that we can consider as being at the bottom of the pyramid. In other words, so if you look at the labor force on the screen now, you see by age group, those who never attended school has a very high number. But again, when you look at the story breaking down, you find that in terms of employment, they seem to have a way of getting by, as it were. So what does this say about the size of our informal economy, as it were?
Like Adeji said, I think that is those are people that make up the base of our MSME sector, and that has been the major support for the for growth somewhat in Nigeria. Many people that have been unable to um, attain formal education would have to find some means to get by, and many of these people have turned to the informal sector, like we can see, like we believe from this data. So I think that this is, I think that um, the data supports that the supports the growth in the MSME. I think that what the government can do and what they have been trying to do anyway is to improve growth for MSMEs, help to ensure that ease of doing business for these companies, for these smaller business holders is improved. We can see that there are, that the policy environment in Nigeria is quite erratic. We hear of new policies, for example, the NIPOST for Uber services or taxi hailing services. We hear of increased policies that affect them significantly. So I think that what can be done to ease this unemployment levels, as we can see that a lot of the uneducated population are still trying to find their way into the employment market, employment space. I think what can be done is to, in terms of policies, help the ease of doing business. I see that one way, although I've not fully looked into the new CAMA. I think that one way that has been done is the revised CAMA 2020, and I think that there is more to be done if it looks like this might be the new future going forward.
Well, again, when you look at the government doing agriculture, Chima, I'm sticking with you for just about 1 minute. So we've seen so much government saying, look, we're going into agriculture. You see the Anchor Borrowers Program of the central bank. You see the NASAL also putting in there and all of that. Do you think, and the folks around this never went to school, primary school, would most likely be those who are engaged in agriculture, isn't it? And the ancillaries. So we expect to see the numbers better among this class of people or Nigerians.
Well, that is true as well. But with agriculture, we get a lot of studies to say that we need, for agriculture to really improve, we need to see improved technology. We need to see more educated farmers, not necessarily school education now, but in terms of seed quality, in terms of soil quality and the rest of that, we need to still educate these farmers. So apart from giving them money, apart from giving them fertilizer, we also need to give them some sort of education. With that, we see that a lot of all these uneducated population will still try to find their way. When we see the gains, we see the yields from local farmers improving, we'll see that the interest for many of these younger population would be sort of sparked. So we can see that improvements in the agricultural sector would help to alleviate the unemployment numbers.
That sounds very interesting. Ayodeji, a little bit more around now. Let's go down into the state distribution of this and just very surprising 45.2% unemployment in Akwa Ibom and Rivers State, 43.7%. The highest unemployment was in Imo State, 48.7%. For Imo State, which you look at, high number of folks who are traders and what have you. But if you look at oil-rich states like Rivers State and Akwa Ibom recording north of 40% unemployment, the highest in the country.
I think it looks very interesting. And if you look at the data, the data also supports what's going on. So within the region, there are a lot of I'll call maybe scholarship supports that they also get. So there's really no incentive for you to also look for. You can, if you check our budget, so there's a certain amount that is also assigned to to some people within that area, so that we can have some form of calmness within that region because of our very dependent on oil. Yeah, so it's not surprising to see that very high unemployment rate. But also, we may also want to look at the role maybe culture, beliefs also plays in some of this data that ranges from states to states. But some that believe to just maybe housewives stay at home to work, while one person stays at home to work while the other person goes to work. You would also have that kind of there will be some form of distortion in, or would reflect that that belief. There are some that it's only the women that work. There are some states that it's the women that work and or that farms, and while the man stays at home. So you would also, we see belief culture also having a form of influence on the data. But I also like to also just touch on something on the educational data on this unemployment rate. So it's also showing, when you see the rate at which for those that have never attended school, 23.6%. But the highest within that rate below primary school, 46.2. So we can assume that for those that have not attended school at all, a lot of them may be within the agric space and maybe within the rural area, still very actively engaged in farming. Those below primary school, very high rates, should also send a signal that education is also very key. Or you also want to go for one form of vocation or the other. Vocation, for those that have been involved in vocation, any form of vocation, the rate is as low as 17.9%, which also just sends a strong signal to also the upcoming that as much as possible, you try to engage in one vocation or the other so that you can also be employable, or you can also add value. The doctorate degree can, for those that, despite the low level of low rate of doctors, that's academic doctors in Nigeria, the unemployment rate is still very high at 23.3%. So it shows also the value. Yes, it's not about the certificate, but in the very developed client, for most of these guys will be involved in research and development, and for them to be able to add value.
Okay, so when we talk about the lowest unemployment level, Chinma, according to this report, the highest unemployment state government in Nigeria is Anambra State, 13.1%. And in terms of underemployment, that's 17%. So from unemployment to underemployment, both figures are below 20%. So this is quite a very interesting figure, isn't it?
Yes, it's
just a second. I want Chima to react to this first.
Okay, no problem.
When you look at the demography of Anambra State as and its location.
I didn't quite get the numbers exactly. You said you gave me figures for unemployment and underemployment.
13.1%. And
okay, and that's the highest.
17%. Now that's the lowest.
Oh, okay.
13% in Anambra State.
Okay, so I think that would I say that's indicative of the story that we get about these people? We know that there is a lot of stories about the people from the East being very industrious, with the popularly known Aba boys and all that. I think that number is quite indicative of that story. I think that that is a very good ploy. However, if you now put that side by side with the numbers from Imo State, I think Imo State is one of the states with the highest level of unemployment as well.
48.7.
The numbers then begin to deviate. So it's not very clear what it is. I would think that 13.1% would indicate the level of industriousness that we have come to believe come from the people from Anambra State, however.
Ayodeji.
So I totally align with what Chima said on the perspective of looking at the data from the East. So what we may, the underemployment now looks at the number of hours. So for full employment, you must have worked for 40 hours in a week. And for the underemployment, I think between 19 hours in a week. So we may also want to drill down maybe to confirm maybe some of the vocational programs that some of these states have been engaged in to ensure that a lot of those that are not even engaged in food trades also have one or two things that they are doing in terms of providing the artisans, so I'll call them the artisans, that they are engaged in one way or the other. So when you look at the variance in the data, Imo and you're looking at Akwa Ibom, we also have Imo and Anambra. We can also look at in terms of even the government, based on what we've had looking at the past 4 years. Some of the initiatives that some of the governors that have also taken may also be a major factor. We know there has been a lot of private sector initiative by this governor. Is serving his second term, and at the last governor also, that's for the Imo State, based on also the news. It's based on the news. I feel maybe much too was not done to get a lot of the populace from that area also engaged.
Yeah, I think it's quite a very interesting data we have on our hands here. But again, we will continue to interrogate this. I'm sure it's still the first day. Both of you, I'm sure, with your various teams at Vertiva and at Afrinvest, I'm sure we spend the rest of today and next week, early Monday, to begin to drill down. And we expect you folks to also put out your reports and how we take this forward into the macroeconomics, and if there are anything we can take out of them for the financial markets as well. We would like to hear from all of you from Monday. Thank you so much for raising the curtain on this unemployment data released by the Statistics Office in Nigeria on Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you so much, Chima Ukadike from Vertiva Capital, the consumer goods analyst. Do have a great weekend. And Ayodeji Ebo, the CEO at Afrinvest Securities. Thank you very much, and see you next week.